I'm joined now by Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew, welcome. We'll start with that motion. I watched it. I thought it was extraordinary. It was spellbinding, in fact. As soon as the Prime Minister, he started out with all that lovely language about Jewish Australians. Then he starts using terms like ceasefire, and away he goes. And then it became a motion about Gaza and southern Lebanon. I reckon you'd have to go back a couple of decades to find any other parallel like it in the Parliament. I mentioned at the top of the show, Peter Dutton was the one who reached out to the PM last week. I am surprised the government wasn't on the front foot this week, given Parliament was resuming. They didn't put a motion on the table. They were pushed into it by the opposition. They had those meetings today, of course, the Leader and the PM. They couldn't agree. The PM insisted that there be all these references to Lebanon and Gaza. He wanted the ceasefire in there. Dutton says no. We know where we ended up in the Parliament. It was pretty extraordinary. What was your take? I mentioned too there, it carried with the support of the Greens and the Teals. What's your take?
Yes, well, look, I think it's a mistake. That's my view. I don't see what's wrong with basically passing an opposition motion about October 7 and then in a subsequent day, if you want to talk about a ceasefire and these sorts of things, to do that. And I had one opposition frontbencher actually say to me this afternoon, why did he walk into the trap? Which is, to look like you are talking out of both sides of your mouth, as Peter Dutton said. I just think it's unnecessary sort of a move by the PM. I mean, maybe he didn't want to give Peter Dutton credit. Maybe there were people in his caucus and cabinet who said, there's no way we're voting for that. Maybe he is worried about the vote in Western Sydney. Whatever it is, he himself has said over the weekend, and Mark Butler has said, and Richard Marles has said, October 7 should be its own thing. It should be left alone. There shouldn't be vigils or protests from pro-Palestinian people on that date. So when it comes to October 8 and Parliament sitting, what's wrong with passing a motion in terms of the victims, more than 1,200 of that barbarity, absolute barbarity, on October 7? I thought it was pretty short-sighted. He objected to a couple of phrases, I understand, the PM. There were two meetings at 8:30 and 11 o'clock roughly this morning between Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. One of the clauses had basically the Middle East was quiet before the October 7 barbarity. I understand the PM didn't particularly accept that, but that could have been amended or something, couldn't it? And just pass the thing, and then we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. And that's the main thing. That's the issue. It wouldn't be on the front pages of the paper tomorrow if you'd had just handled it in that fashion. But what the whole thing has done, and I guess Peter Dutton was probably thinking this could occur, is, again, it shows that real divide, massive divide on this war. And you said haven't seen it for a couple of decades. Well, Kieran was reminded today, Kieran Gilbert, my colleague, of the Iraq War. Simon Crean opposing Australia's involvement in that, and Mark Latham as well. So I think that would be not quite the same because Australia's not involved in this war, but it's along those lines, and I'm not sure it needed to be. The other statements that the PM and his ministers have made about October 7 is it's a horrific terrorist incident. That's all the motion sought to do. I don't think that motion would have taken anything away from Labor's calls for a ceasefire or for less civilian deaths in Lebanon and Gaza. But those calls, I interviewed Penny Wong about a week and a half ago, and she said, the only way out's a two-state solution, when she was in New York, and I interviewed her. And I'm like, really? I mean, how many decades have leaders of the US and other countries been trying to achieve that? It's not that simple. That's probably not the first step out of this. So I do think that it also comes from Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong thinking Netanyahu has gone too far and that he is timing it to do with the US election. And that it's not just about defending Israel as much as they say it is. I think that's their real view.
That's not what October 7's about, Andrew.
No, I know.
That's the problem for the Prime Minister.
But I'm just trying to...
That's a problem.
I guess you asked me what I thought their motivations were, and I've just given you the full gamut now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. But I mean, I think the problem is he is trying to put too much into the motion. If they'd kept it simple and perhaps even shorter, and as I said, the government had led with the motion. I mean, Blind Freddie can tell you it's coming up when Parliament resumes, if October 7 is the week of resumption. They should have been driving what the motion would look like rather than being led to it by Peter Dutton. And they could have had a secondary motion, and that would have been very difficult for Peter Dutton not to support a secondary motion about civilian deaths in Gaza. And they would have been on the front foot. But again, this goes to my broader point. We often talk about this. Who the heck is running their strategy? The government looks like it's reacting to events. It's not in charge of events. Now, it's supposed to be the biggest office in the country with the biggest megaphone being the Prime Minister's, and they look like flotsam and jetsam as things are happening around them, not in control of things. I mean, just as we go to air, it's broken in the last half an hour. I mean, Labor MP Peta Credlin, very well-respected Labor MP, he's resigned as the chair of the powerful Security and Intelligence Committee. Now, what's this about? Because a lot of people had faith, given his ethnic background and the seat in which he holds in inner city Melbourne, that he could be a bit of a power for good here.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything sinister in relation to this. He's made him a special envoy on social cohesion. We look like we have a fair bit of a problem in that department. Perhaps he should concentrate on that. And of course, he's got to worry about the Greens in Wills. So Raf Ciccone is a sensible fellow. He'll replace him on that committee. So I think he'd be of similar sort of ideology to Peta Credlin. He's in the right of the party. So I think that'll probably work. But I would suspect it's to do with that new role, and that to me makes sense. But in terms of the strategy and how things are running, well, I think the PM likes to do a lot of it himself. He's been around the parliament a long time and reckons he can get a lot of the judgment calls right. Of course, that's just not how it works.
What's he got right, mate? What's he got right?
It's too big. It's too big a job, as you know. And so, yeah, I mean, there probably is an argument, particularly at this point in the cycle. He got David Epstein in there to help Tim Gartrell, so he got, someone reputed to be a heavy hitter, but he probably needs one or two other senior heads, because they are in a great deal of difficulty, aren't they? They really are. And those poll numbers aren't moving. They're down from the last election. And, the right circumstances last year, Peter Dutton could snatch himself to 72, 73 seats and an ability to form office. It's a least likely outcome at the moment. But I'll tell you what, no rate cut before next April. Look out, Labor government.
Hey, just before you go, are you surprised that Stephen Miles doesn't want to see the Prime Minister in Queensland during the campaign?
No, I'm not, because Steve Miles is on the nose there, and he's not even on the paraphernalia, I think, which they do with unpopular leaders. But polling up there shows Anthony Albanese is on the nose there. But don't forget, in the last federal election, Queensland, Scott Morrison won in a landslide, didn't he? He won about 22 or 23 of the 30 seats, just as he did in 2019. So it's never been a friendly state for Anthony Albanese or the Labor Party, really, since Kevin Rudd was around, a Queenslander. So, no, it's no surprise. It's a little bit embarrassing for the PM, though. I think if it is indeed the case that Miles doesn't want him there, because Albanese said in recent days that he'll be in Queensland soon. And it's never a good look. But I remember Gladys Berejiklian avoiding Scott Morrison coming, apart from once in the New South Wales campaign of 2019. She won and then he won.
I know, but if Albo needs seats, which he does, we think we're going to have losses in WA for Labor, he's got to go somewhere where there is an opportunity. And there's seats up there that are a lot more in the Liberal Party's ledger than there is in the Labor Party ledger. If he's going to win and hold on to government, he's got to make ground in Queensland. And I just don't see how he can do that if he doesn't turn up at all.